Is there sound now? Is there sound now? No sound still? Still no sound? Still no sound. Why is there no sound? Oh, no. All right, let me see what's going on here. See if I can get the sound going. No sound. Sound now? Okay. Oh, my goodness. Why? Okay. All right. Okay, good. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. This thing is getting real finicky. Okay, good. Glad that you can hear me. Does it sound okay? Does it sound okay? Please tell me that it is not echoey or anything like that. Hopefully it sounds good. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me loud and clear. Okay, great. So as I was saying earlier, welcome. Okay, I've got happy faces. That's good. Welcome to the Royal We Shabbat Shalom. And all right, happy Saturday to you. Shabbat Shalom. We're continuing on in our journey of the book of Numbers. And it's been a pleasure to be able to follow along as Moses and the Lord has led people out of oppression. And what's interesting about the story is that it mirrors our story coming out of oppressive relationships, leaving oppressive family dynamics, in which case we were not able to live the life according to a calling, a purpose, and to have that relationship with God that you and I both desire to have, but not only that, but God desires to have with us. Now, I want to make note of something, that what we can see in this story is that it's God who desires the relationship with his people more than they even desire the relationship with God. Is this not true? So what we can see is that a lot of the people that Moses led out of Egypt grumbled and complained. They started to, even though they love God, they want to worship God, they grumbled having to leave Egypt, because Egypt, even though they were oppressed, even though the relationship was abusive, even though they were not able to worship and be the people that God called them to be, they were comfortable, right? How many of you have oftentimes looked back at toxic relationships and said, oh my goodness, I was more comfortable, I was abused, but I was comfortable, right? And it's scary out there. It's scary getting away from family. Well, if I leave my family, I'll have no family type of a deal, right? And this was the people grumbling that Moses had to lead, right? A people who were grumbling. And so it does, in fact, mirror our own understanding of leaving toxic relationships. Not only that, but then the journey of leaving a toxic relationship is a journey of being rebuilt. We learn new things. Our understanding is changing. As we are drawing closer to God and to our faith, God is undoing all the things that we used to believe, right? So the things that we used to think were cool, the way in which we used to hang out with people, the places we used to go, everything just, we lose interest. Many of you, myself included, go through a phase of not quite knowing who we are. And it's an indication that being brought up in the environments we were brought up in, living the lifestyles that we were living in the past, we never really knew who we were. Sure, we were doing all the things that we were told to do. We were going to school. We were playing sports. We became cheerleaders. We went out with friends. We went to the bars. We went to the clubs. We experienced a lot of the things that the world had to offer, but never really knowing who we are. And so this becomes a point in time in our lives, as it is in the book of Numbers, where God is re-instructing people as he pulled them out of Egypt. And he says, you are not Egyptians. You are not that. I am going to show you who you are. But first, you have to undo all the things that you've learned, and you have to relearn all the things that I'm about to give you. And this is where we see the birth of a brand new nation, a nation of people who believe in God. And by the way, one of the interesting things that we've discovered so far is that a lot of the things that God is instructing these people to do, we still do in the United States of America to this day. A lot of the rules, a lot of the things, a lot of the, and granted, they're twisted and weird now, but still we can see a lot of the things that we do were actually things that God instructed the mixed multitude of people to do when they came out of Egypt. That is by far one of the most fascinating things for me to see. So if you have your Bibles, open them up to the book of Numbers. We are on Numbers chapter 6, and we're going to read through and see what the Lord has to say. Let's go ahead and open up in prayer before we get started. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. We thank you for your presence. We thank you for your instruction. We ask, Lord, that you would soften our hearts before you, open our minds, open our ears to receive your word. Help us to apply principles and insights and new wisdom into our daily lives. Everybody says, amen. So we're in the book of Numbers, chapter 6. And I'll go ahead and begin. Now, again, up to this point in time, we're seeing the Lord instruct people to live a new life. Everything is instruction. Everything is instruction, from what to eat, what to wear, how to worship. These people had to be, what to do when somebody is sick. There's a lot to do with people who are ill and sick. A lot to do with infection. We see that people, if they're infected, they're not to meet together with the congregation because things can spread, right? How many of you were here last week? You were able to hear me give my pet peeve of how oftentimes today, when I was going to church, when I first moved here to the Midwest, I would go to these big churches, take the kids there, and there were people that would bring their sick kids, snotty noses, everything, and it always bothered me. And not because I'm a prude and I'm not angry, but I'm like, oh, come on, really? Can't you leave your sick kids at home? Stay home with them. Let them heal. You don't have to spread this gift of illness just because you got it. It's always been kind of a pet peeve of mine. If I'm sick, I stay home. But granted, I'm also tough. So if I've got a little bit of a sniffle, I'm not going to stay home, and I'll still work. But if I'm really sick, I'll stay home. I've had my kids around other kids that were brought that literally were throwing up the night before, and it always bothered me. And then I knew, okay, well, my kids are going to get sick in 3 days. Okay, here we go. So there was a lot of instruction that the Lord gave these people, saying if somebody is sick, if somebody is ill, if there is an infection, send them away for a couple of weeks. Don't have them mingling with everybody, because this stuff spreads. Even back in the ancient world. And this, by the way, is ancient Egypt. So when we think of ancient Egypt and the pyramids and this, this is all around that time, all right, when they were built. So let's continue on. The Lord said to Moses, chapter 6, verse 1, speak to the Israelites and say to them, if a man or woman wants to make a special vow, a vow of dedication to the Lord, as a Nazarite, they must abstain from wine and other fermented drink, and must not drink vinegar made from wine or other fermented drink. Now, it's important to understand, how many of you are wine enthusiasts, right? If you are, nothing wrong with that, right? No, we're not here to talk bad about wine drinkers. Wine can be a good thing. Wine is something we see all throughout the Bible, right? And now, granted, I don't know about today's wine. Today's wine is probably so filled. I'm not a big wine drinker, and I'll tell you why. This is why. And it's because of how wine is made today. I've tried wine. There's red wines. There's white wines. I think that whenever I have a white wine, it's okay. But when it comes to red wines, it always affects me very negatively. It always gets. One time we had some wine on a vacation, and I think I had half a glass, and I thought I was going to die. Something came over me, this massive headache. I just felt like I couldn't open my eyes. I was going to sleep, and I was just, it was done. I literally felt like I was done. I thank God I woke up the next morning. I thought it was poisonous. I thought I drank poison. Come to find out that I believe I have this allergic reaction to certain wines, red wines, and it's not because of what the main ingredient of red wine is, which is the fermentation of the grapes and whatnot, but it has more to do with all the other nonsense stuff that they put in it, the fillers, the what do you call it, the sulfates, right? Sulfates and the chemicals and the other things that I have a bad reaction to. And so what's interesting about this is they did drink wine back in the ancient world. And I can only imagine that back then, the sulfates and the chemicals and all these other nonsense stuff didn't exist. So we're talking about pure fermented grapes, pure wine, and something that probably you and I would not be able to experience. I'm not even sure it exists in this day and age, because of not only the way they make the wine and add chemicals, but because our soil is so poisoned, I guess is the right word to say. The soil, right? All of the elements and whatever is just in the soil because of the water that is pumped through and it is filtered and chemicals are added, right? We really, unfortunately and sadly, in our lives, in our existence, we have no choice but to experience almost all matters of food, vegetation, and wine that is tainted. I don't believe there is anything anymore at this time that can be pure. Even, I read an article once that said even the rainwater now that falls because of all of the chemicals that are used throughout, the rainwater is not even pure. And so anything that waters the ground, it then gets absorbed into the plants. It gets absorbed into the grapes. And if the problem is in the water, then that water is getting absorbed. Do you see what I'm saying? So as a result, we have these things that are just not pure anymore. So is wine okay? Yeah. Listen, a lot of people drink wine. That's fine. For some reason, I can have white wine and that's okay. But red wine seems to really bother me. I don't do so well with that. But still, I am just curious to know what that wine would have been like back in the ancient world. Prior to the chemicals, prior to the GMOs, prior to all the sulfates, prior to all this stuff, we're just talking about the natural fermentation in the natural ground. I imagine back in this time period, things were more pure. This, by the way, is probably why people lived longer. I know a lot of science says that people didn't live long back then. I would argue and say that they most likely lived longer lives because their food was more pure. It makes no sense to say that they didn't live longer. I think that we're trying to catch up to them, but not in a natural way, right? Well, let's continue on and read. So if a man or a woman wants to make a special vow, a vow of dedication to the Lord as a Nazarite, they must abstain from wine and other fermented drink, must not drink vinegar made from wine or other fermented drink. They must not drink grape juice or eat grapes or raisins as long as they remain under the Nazarite vow. They must not eat anything that comes from the grapevine, not even the seeds or the skins. So it's interesting to see that the Lord is clumping together wine with grapes, we know that grapes comes from wine, or raisins, which is the dried, right? As long as they remain under the Nazarite vow. So there's something about grapes, there's something inherent about grapes, wine, raisins, that ties these things together. During the entire period of their Nazarite vow, no razor may be used on their head. They must be holy until the period of their dedication to the Lord is over. They must let their hair grow long. It's good for me to know, number one, that I'm not Nazarite. Number two, People have been shaving their heads for a long time. Yes. So I don't feel bad. This is not a new trend. This didn't just start, right? There have been razors and people have been shaving their heads with sharp objects since the ancient days of Egypt. And it's interesting. I wonder what they used. Now, the Bible here says razor, but I'm not sure exactly if it's the same type of razor that we use. I don't know. Perhaps it is. But it is an interesting fact that they did shave their heads. In fact, there was a movie that depicted this that was directed some time ago about the Spartans, which takes place later. But they portrayed what the Spartans were up against, which I can't remember the group of people. One of the largest nations at that time, King Xerxes, and I can't remember who King Xerxes was that the Spartans fought. However, he had a shaven head. It was a very popular thing to do in the ancient world. In fact, royalty oftentimes shaved their head. The kings would shave their heads. So bald is beautiful. All right? Bald is strong. Bald is powerful. And if anybody knows who King Xerxes at the time of the Spartans during the war, if you remember where King Xerxes was from, put it in the comment section because I can't think of it right now. Throughout the period of their dedication to the Lord, the Nazarite must not go near a dead body. Even if their own father or mother or brother or sister dies, they must not make themselves ceremonially unclean on account of them, because the symbol of their dedication to God is on their head. Throughout the period of their dedication, they are consecrated to the Lord. If someone dies suddenly in the Nazarite's presence, thus defiling the hair that symbolizes their dedication, they must shave their head on the 7th day, the day of their cleansing. Then on the 8th day, they must bring 2 doves or 2 young pigeons to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting. The priest is to offer one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, to make atonement for the Nazarite, because they sinned by being in the presence of the dead body. That same day, they are to consecrate their head again. They must rededicate themselves to the Lord of the same period of dedication and must bring a year-old male lamb as a guilt offering. The previous days do not count because they became defiled during their period of dedication. Now, this is the law of the Nazarite. When the period of their dedication is over, they are to be brought to the entrance of the tent of meeting. They are to present their offerings to the Lord, a year-old male lamb without defect for a burnt offering, a year-old ewe lamb without defect for a sin offering, a ram without defect for a fellowship offering, together with their grain offerings and drink offerings, and a basket of bread made with the finest flour and without yeast, thick loaves with olive oil mixed in, and then loaves brushed with olive oil. This would be challah. And by the way, I've had challah. Very good. It is very good bread. Bread without yeast. How many of you have had an opportunity to have challah during a Shabbat ceremony? It's it was some of the best bread I've ever had. And to me, when I read this, I'm like, who needs yeast, right? Sometimes if you could just have that fresh baked challah, it is very, very good. I'm a fan. The priest is to present all these before the Lord and make the sin offering and the burnt offering. He is to present the basket of unleavened bread, which is the challah that we're talking about, and is to sacrifice the ram as a fellowship offering to the Lord, together with its grain offering and drink offering. Then at the entrance to the tent of meeting, the Nazarite must shave off the hair that symbolizes their dedication. They are to take the hair and put it in the fire that is under the sacrifice of the fellowship offering. So here we go. So they're shaving their heads now, but they're putting it as a part of the burnt offering. That is not something I've tried. I've not shaved my head, sprinkled it over a fire yet. Don't know if I'm going to do that. But it's interesting that the Lord wanted the aroma of the hair that they had shaven off of their head for this dedication. After the Nazarite has shaved off the hair that symbolizes their dedication, the priest is to place in their hands a boiled shoulder of the ram and one thick loaf and one thin loaf from the basket, both made without yeast. The priest shall then wave these before the Lord as a wave offering. They are holy and belong to the priest, together with the breast that was waved and the thigh that was presented. After that, the Nazarite may drink wine. This is the law of the Nazarite who vows offerings to the Lord in accordance with their dedication. In addition to whatever else they can afford, they must fulfill the vows they have made according to the law of the Nazarite. We're going to get into a priestly blessing. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron and his sons, this is how you are to bless the Israelites. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. So they will put my name on the Israelites, and I will bless them." And this, by the way, is a prayer. And I remember as part of a Messianic congregation, we did say this prayer almost every morning. And I think it's a great prayer, and it's a great blessing that the Lord told to Moses, tell Aaron and his sons, this is how you are to bless the Israelites. And so in Israel, they still go through this blessing. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. I believe this is a fantastic way to also encourage people and to build them up. Oftentimes, we struggle to know how to pray for people. How many of you have struggled knowing the right way to pray for people during difficult times, perhaps? Oftentimes, we are scrounging around for words to say when we're praying. We are not quite sure, right? And so we just throw stuff out there. Oh, Father God, oh, be with my friend so-and-so, and, on and on and on, yada, yada. One of the things that we can look to is that the Lord gave the Israelites a prayer to say this. I think we should pay attention to this because this is a prayer that the Lord is giving the people to say to one another. Why? Because this is a prayer that is encouraging. It's a prayer that's empowering. It's a prayer that blesses a person when they're coming in, blesses a person when they're leaving. It blesses a person in their time of need, in their time of sickness, and in their time of health. And so it doesn't have to be, oftentimes we think about praying for somebody and we try to gather all the right words because we feel we're going to make them feel good with the right words, with the right prayer. But what the Lord is doing here is saying, I will give you the right words that will allow everybody to feel good. And it just goes like this. Verse 24, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. So they will put my name on the Israelites, and I will bless them. That's thus saith the Lord. So by putting the name of the Lord, right, in this is a fantastic prayer and an excellent way to close. I may take this prayer and start to use this in the beginning of each one of these messages. We'll see, but especially now that I'm reading this and we're reading this together. And so with that, blessings to each and every one of you. And Shabbat Shalom and happy Saturday to you. Hope that you have a fantastic rest of your weekend. And I will be available tomorrow for one-on-one phone calls for those of you who do need to find support for this weekend. You can schedule some time down below if you do need that one-on-one time. Blessings to each and every one of you. Have a great rest of your weekend. Bye, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Have a great rest of your weekend.